So, Bob, it is just after the NFC Championship game in which your team of the Philadelphia Eagles prevailed over the Washington Commanders. How does it feel?
Yeah, that was a good game. That was a slaughter. Yeah.
It was.
Yeah.
And by the time people are hearing this episode,
Right.
I think it'll be after the Super Bowl, I'm guessing. So they all know if Philly actually prevailed over KC or not.
Yeah.
Which is a laughable prospect. But, weirder things have happened. Just joking.
What's the over-under on you coming to my house to watch the game?
I don't know, and I don't know. I mean, I'd be glad to come. I feel like I'm bad luck. The last time I was over at your house when Philly was playing KC, it didn't go so well.
That's true. It did not. Yeah.
Yeah.
An eagle flew out of over my house, about 50 feet above my house, the game, and I'm talking to my brother, and he's like, "Is it a good omen or a bad omen?" And it turns out it was.
I mean, I think the fact that the Bills lost to KC is a very bad omen because at least with the Bills, 4-time Super Bowl loser in a row in the early 90s would have been a much happier prospect. I would have been very confident in your Eagles, but I have zero confidence because, one, the Eagles looked good, but not that good this year, and KC they just always figure out a way. And some people say the refs are in the bag with KC because NFL wants Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift to be cheering because my wife, I'm watching the game, and literally that's the first question my wife asks. Well, she asked, I can't remember what order, but one of the questions was, what's third and goal mean? And the other question was, where's Taylor Swift? So, you know what I mean? Like, when you got that sort of juice in the NFL, you don't. Plus the three-peat thing and the legacy thing and the dynasty thing. And, anyway.
I understand that she's actually going to be on the sidelines in the black and white stripes, ready to ref the game if they call her up.
Is that a joke that other people are making?
No, I just made it up.
That's a funny joke.
Yeah.
I mean, that's hilarious.
Yeah. Anyways, I'm ordering.
I mean, God bless, Taylor Swift, Travis Kelce, Mahomes, also Jalen Hurts. They're all stand-up people.
Yep.
I wish the best for all of them. Although I don't know, Philly won what, like 6 years ago or something.
Yeah.
So, if it was the Bills or the Commanders, I'd be excited. But this way, it's funny. Right after Philly or right after KC won, they were doing the post game, with Matt Ryan, who now is a post game guy, and all those other guys. And I can't remember his name, but as soon as he gets the microphone, he's like, "Hey, listen to all you haters out there that think that it's boring that you have KC and Philly in the Super Bowl again. Look, just be happy that you're alive to witness the dynasty and the awesomeness that is potentially going to happen here." And I just thought, well, one, I was kind of convinced by that, but another part of me was just like, what was he seeing on Twitter as that prompted him to yell at us, the audience, to appreciate it and not be up? Because I'm guessing a lot of people, unless you're a KC fan, was hoping for the Bills to win.
Yeah.
It's sort of like watching New England win, Tom Brady all the time. So, God, come on. Like, let someone else in.
Yeah.
Anyway. So emails, Bob. Annual long-term patron Leela, she says, "Dear Bob, in a recent episode, you spoke about feeling relief about not having kids so that you wouldn't pass your trauma on to them." Bob, do you remember that?
I do.
"I hope you have received a number of validating messages. I just want to add my own. I'm a mom to a 3-year-old and a 9-month-old, and I have been in therapy for half my life. Believe me, as much as I put all my energy into shielding my children from my traumas, there isn't a single day when I do not go to sleep with regret. It is a relentless battle, and it is so much harder than one I fight in my marriage. It's so much harder than the one I fight in my marriage." Interesting. All of this is not to say that you couldn't have done it. But at the end of the day, even with all the work I am doing, all the therapy, all the regulation, all the attunement, there's no guarantee that my children will grow into adults who have any less trauma than I do. And to have to take responsibility for that is not something that should be forced upon anyone. You said that if there is one thing you know you'd be able to do, you said that if there's one thing you know you'd be able to do is to apologize to your kids.
Yeah.
And I can say that is the one thing I always come back to, because inevitably mistakes are made, even if much smaller than the ones my parents used to make. I never feel that a mistake is too small to apologize for. I never feel that a mistake is too... Yeah. Even my baby, who perhaps doesn't understand my words yet, gets apologized to. If anything, it is good practice for a lifetime of apologies that surely will follow. Big hugs and love to you, Bob. Leela, what do you think, Bob?
Well, thank you. Here's what I think. Watch out for too much apologizing, I guess. I don't know. It's really cool that you're being so conscientious about parenting your little tigers there. I had a therapist years ago who told me a story about her kid who was at the time in her early 20s, she sat her down one day and she said, I want to talk about some things and apologize for some of the things that I did when I was, when you were growing up. And she went through the things that were important to her. And the kid laughed and said, "Oh, Mom, no, those things are okay. But this other thing, this one hurt." And the mom pivoted. So, and apologized for that. It's like she's not going to get attached to the thing that she thinks was the quote unquote sin and pay attention to her kids. So, I guess we can take our lead from our children. If they have a problem with something that we've done, they're good. I mean, as they go up, they'll be better at it, but a good, they're the ones that know where they've been hurt. So, I feel sad.
About?
Well, I think it's really cool that Leela's such a mindful parent, and I wish it was easier. I think it's a pretty hard job. From what I can tell, the people that I've seen parent kids, it doesn't look like it's, it's rewarding and all, but looks like it's a lot of effort and fair amount of stress, etc. So, yeah, I guess I feel sad. And lately, I've actually had the thought, just on my own, without anybody prompting it, that maybe there would have been something good if I had had children. Something good to come of that. But I'm still, I don't wish it went the other way. I don't. It's okay. Everybody has their road not taken, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Okay.
I don't know.
Do you regret it right now, not having kids?
No.
Okay.
No, but that's that. I always think about that. That line from that Robert Frost poem. And sorry, I could not travel both and be one traveler. That one about the road not taken. I suppose for every road that we don't take, we may have a little bit of regret or a little bit of sorry, even if we prefer the ones that we did. So there's a shadow of that inside me.
Yeah. Yeah, I am mostly concerned right now about your feelings, and if you're not regretting the decision.
No. No, I don't regret it overall. I think it was the right choice for me. Yeah.
My fraternity, it was a very small, changing the subject, was a very small fraternity.
Yeah.
And other fraternities have like really famous people. A lot of presidents actually were in a lot of the big fraternal organizations are at all the most of the colleges, particularly Ivy League. And my frat is one of the first fraternities, but also for whatever reason just never really took off. And most colleges don't have a branch of my fraternity. But there are two famous people from my fraternity. One is Robert Frost.
Oh.
And the other one is, unfortunately, James Woods.
Oh.
So, annual patron Tanya, she says, "Hello, I just had an amazing therapy session that could not have happened if I had not become a patron of Psychology in Seattle way back in 2016. I would love it if you share this email with Bob as well, because the episodes with him are especially impactful. I have complex PTSD and have been working with my therapist for over 8 years. In that time, I have been very difficult to work with. Even now, I usually tell him at least once per session that I hate him. We have had many ups and downs where I've been neutral at best towards him to overtly hostile towards him at worst. The last year or so, things seem to have calmed down for me quite a bit, and he made a comment about a month ago that I have made a shift to be more cooperative during sessions, especially when he touches on something that would normally be a triggering landmine for me. It felt great to hear that from him, and it got me thinking about all the progress I have made between therapy with him and listening to Psychology in Seattle all this time. Last week, we were having a softer moment, and I told him that recently I realized that I haven't felt empty in at least a year, and that I wouldn't recognize myself between now and when he and I first met.
Wow.
This could not have happened without Psychology in Seattle and all the reflection I've done as a direct result of so many years of episodes. Thank you so much for all that you and your team do. Tanya, what do you think, Bob?
Oh, that's nice. I'm really pleased for you, Tanya. That's great news. Good for you.
Yeah, it's really an amazing email. I mean, if I, after almost 17 years, just received this email, I would say it was all worth it. The way that she describes it is so familiar to me. Just all the years and years that you have to work on this, and all the therapy that she's done, and all the work that her therapist has put into it. I mean, she says that, even now, I usually tell him at least once per session that I hate him.
Yeah.
So that's after improving quite a bit. So imagine the hostility just overall.
Right.
And of course, the hostility comes from transference and pain and trauma and trying to protect oneself, and the disorganized, fearful attachment that is, when you get close to someone, you just get more scared, more angry, more protective, more needy. And just how long it takes to overcome, and just how much Tanya has done that, how hard she's worked
right on.
For herself, which I'm glad.
Mm-hmm.
And also to have a podcast that has a theme of talking about this and other related things, and how that would, I imagine, enhance things, put things in perspective. Because we don't know Tanya personally, so if we're talking about something, it'd be harder to interpret as if we're biased against her or something, which will happen in therapy sometimes,
Right.
And also listening to the podcast is like overhearing a conversation, right? Because I'll tell my borderline clients, you can believe me that I care about you, and I'm never going to abandon you. And they'll be, you're just saying that. Whereas if you're listening to you and me talk, and we're not, we don't know the individual, we don't have any reason to shine people on in that way, it could become more internalized,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Right. Makes sense.
But yeah, that feeling is so familiar to me as well, of that she doesn't feel as empty, and she's softer, and she's less hostile, and the therapist has said you're more cooperative during sessions, even though Tanya is still saying she hates him once a session. So that shift to opening up, trusting, internalizing that it's possible that she's lovable, and that she is, at the very least, a good enough person to not be attacked and betrayed and harmed when you get close to someone. I mean, that's kind of the bottom line, right?
Yeah.
And so it's a great thing to hear. Along these lines, Stacy actually just this morning, I don't normally do this, but while we're on the topic of praise, I suppose. So there's a Psychology in Seattle subreddit. It's a forum on Reddit, and it's unofficial. It's not run by us or owned by us. And it's not a super busy subreddit, but increasingly so over the years. More and more people are using it. I think a lot of fans either use the comment section on YouTube or the Facebook fan page. But also I think another place is Reddit. And this post I want to read mostly because the individual that posted it, and this would have just been yesterday it was posted, was really concerned that I would never see this.
Oh.
And I just have to say, if you really want to send me something, email us through the website. But but I also thought it was an interesting angle that I have never heard before, and I just want to like put it out there so that maybe I can concentrate on it more. But anyway, so this individual goes by, I'm going to ignore that. That's their handle. They say, thank you, Kirk. I can't thank him enough for the work he does, for the conversations he has, for the empathy he has, for how he stands up for what is right. He doesn't think anyone's past the point of no return. He believes in redemption. So just chiming in, that one's interesting because I do believe that. I don't know if I formally believe that, but it is, I guess, a product of the foundational belief that I have. And also, I think it comes from two places. One is my childhood and the way I was treated and the things that I saw, but also Christianity. That was the core message that was given to me about Jesus and about Christianity, is that everyone can repent. Everyone, the prodigal son and original sin's more of a Catholic thing, right? But and the Catholic thing's kind of interesting because to me, you were raised Catholic, right?
Sort of.
That the notion is you're born sinners and you need to be in a constant state of, well, I guess, the whole confession thing is along those lines, right?
It is.
And good priests would absolutely give the message that everyone is, lovable and good, and regardless of what you've done in the past, if you ask for forgiveness and you're true to your heart, then God will forgive you. So I guess Catholics have that, but it's hard to know what message is really internalized. I will say that my hippie 70s version of Christianity in Issaquah, Washington was very soft and not punitive.
Good.
And had this message, and when you're 10 years old and you're frequently making mistakes, or you shoplift from the store, or you get angry at a kid, at a friend, or you talk back to your parents, there's a lot of concern when you're that age about, oh my God, what have I done? Am I lovable? Yeah. Am I a bad kid? And to just have that message there. And so, yeah, I do believe in redemption. I'm not saying that people shouldn't have consequences, but I do believe that people are good. Do I have exceptions for people like Charlie Manson? Maybe, Ted Bundy, these kinds of people. These are extremely rare individuals. And I suppose I would extend it to them within reason, right? Would I recommend that a loved one were to date one of these guys? No. But if they were to credibly in their heart say they would like to turn things around and be a force for good, then within reason, I would support that and I would believe it until proven otherwise. I wouldn't give them my bank account, but I would do what I could to help. I mean, it's completely different, but a similar place in my heart has to do with specializing in people with borderline, who have the kind of transference that is very hard to deal with professionally as a therapist. That it's not just the I hate you, it's the energy, it's the hostility, it's me opening up and trying, my hardest. The amount of heart and mind that I put into these sorts of clients is way beyond any sort of effort that I put into anything else in my life. I mean, dealing with my wife, dealing with my family, dealing with the podcast, or dealing with any other client, it pales in comparison to the amount of like clinging on for dear life that I'm, and of course, my clinging to dear life is nothing compared to what the borderline client is going through, but it's a lot of effort, and to have just week after week of hostility and anger and, threats of suing me or accusations, it's hard. But I know at the core of that person is a good human being, and I see it. I don't just intellectually convince myself of it. I don't know, I guess I just know it's there because of the very cushy life that I had growing up, because that's what was modeled to me. Everyone did have goodness, and I was treated as if I did have goodness, So yeah, I thought that was interesting. He doesn't think anyone's past the point of no return. But just going on, he has made me feel not alone, and despite my past, I am a good person. I know I am, even though I've done bad things. I thought of myself as hopeless. No one was ever going to love me. My issues are too deep. I'm too fucked up. I've been too selfish and self-indulgent to ever deserve the love of anyone else. But that's all false. I'm so much more than my past. I want a bright future, not just for me, but for everyone. You have raised my awareness on so many issues, such as feminism, racism, empathy, and so much more. You are not a pushover, and I know that you are going to try to do what's right to the best of your abilities, and that is something that I admire greatly. Thank you for being yourself. Your work is greatly appreciated. That other line, you are not a pushover, I think what that means is you're not just someone that likes and loves everyone and everything. And I would consider myself to be kind of the opposite of that. If anything, I'm a little overly intolerant of certain things. But yeah, it is an interesting, because, you go to Mr. Rogers, which sometimes people will compare me to, which is absolutely like, I appreciate it. But Mr. Rogers is a god among men. There's no approaching him. But you go to Mr. Rogers, you just imagine that he would have a positive view about anyone, after Elon Musk does a Nazi salute, Mr. Rogers would probably just be like, well, each to their own or something. I don't know. But maybe not, and Mr. Rogers was a complicated guy, and behind closed doors, I'm guessing he was pretty complicated, but you just get that kind of, idea. Whereas for me, I don't react that way to things, and yet I believe in people like Elon Musk himself, that if people were to be less of a dick to him online, if people were to make him feel less afraid, I think things would be different. I believe that. Anyway, so. Again, mostly I just wanted to highlight that I don't usually read positive things like this. I get them occasionally, and they're very appreciated, truly. But the specificity of it, the redemption part of it, which I hadn't really thought about before, and I want to highlight it partially just so I can remind myself to have that, to make sure that that's there. And to maybe even have a greater understanding of that, because it can't just be like this policy. It has to be, because that's what I thought. It's like, well, I don't really have a policy of redemption. I have a foundational understanding of humans, or an approach or something, a belief system that I think results in a belief in redemption. But anyway, and also I just wanted to make sure that this individual knew that I saw it. Let's take a break. We get back. more emails, all of which are just wall-to-wall complimenting me. What do you say? All right, we're back from the break. Bob, do you believe in redemption?
Oh, let's see. Yeah. But I think if you're going to go to the extreme cases like Charles Manson or Ted Bundy, I don't have a whole lot of hope for somebody that's that fucked up. And I kind of think of them as like a wild animal. They don't deserve to be poked, shot at, or whatever, but I wouldn't get in the cage either. So do I believe in redemption? I think redemption means what? That I'm not here to judge? Does it mean that...
No. I mean, at least that's not the way I'm absolutely here to judge.
Okay.
If someone... Being judgmental is a very important part of society and a part of living your life. If someone is a dick to you, you know, the girl who called me a chink in Ballard...
Yeah.
I judge her as a racist.
Yeah, well, that
and
is
as a bad human being, and as someone who probably has some damage that needs to be worked on in therapy, I judge thee.
Yeah.
To Elon Musk, who does what appears to be a Nazi salute twice, either he's extremely racist or he is not careful enough or something. I don't know. I judge thee as having reacted poorly afterwards by making a bunch of Nazi jokes on Twitter. I judge thee. I'm not the arbiter of truth and all that is right and wrong, but in my little way, I judge. So, you know, being judgmental, I don't think is related necessarily to redemption.
Okay.
Yeah, redemption, I believe to be believing that people can make choices for good.
Oh, yeah, anybody could do that.
Yeah.
Some people probably have a harder time with it than others.
Yeah.
I suspect that many folks won't. That people will continue to be self-serving and warlike and xenophobic, and I don't. Those are harmful. But I'll be honest with you. Lately, I'm not too jazzed about humans.
Why?
Because as a species, we are killing the planet, and we are suborning hostility, and we are scaring one another, and we're hurting each other, and we seem to have an me versus you kind of mentality. Colleen and me went to Cirque du Soleil the other day, Friday night, you know, it was for her birthday. And the beginning, they did this sort of opening number thing where, you know, all the members of the cast, all the performers sort of were on stage. And to be honest with you, I actually can't even remember what they did. But I remember just looking at them and tears coming down my eyes, down my cheeks, because it was the first time in a long time that I felt something like hope and inspiration, you know. These people that do these amazing things, they just unbelievably physically gifted, and share that with, you know, the people in the audience. I mean, it was a cold night. It was like 25 degrees outside, and we're in this tent and we're watching these marvelous, athletic, you know, just unbelievably, just really cool.
This one in Woodinville?
Yeah. Yeah. So, but I don't feel...
Is that Cirque du Soleil or Teatro Zanzani?
The first one.
Oh.
Yeah, this show just opened maybe a week ago. Yeah, something like that. I don't feel particularly hopeful about humans. There's a lot of hurting one another and a lot of fear-mongering and
a lot of blind followership. Yeah,
it's really discouraging. So I still believe in kindness and still strive for that in my own heart, but I'm not seeing enough of that out there, and I'm not real impressed with humans as a species.
I vacillate, but I've definitely been in your shoes recently. Yeah, I think part of it, once you get to middle age, is that when I was in my 20s, I looked around and statistics would show this too, that we were on the right side of history, our generation, Gen X, voting on the right side of history, thinking on the right side of history. You know, we were more likely to recognize climate change, to understand and appreciate science, to appreciate the factors and the systems at play that can create economic disparity instead of just blaming them for being lazy, that kind of thing.
Right.
And not being as interested in war and killing. And I thought, well, we just got to get rid of the old people, you know? We just have to grow up. And once we're in power, think what we can do. And every generation, millennials and Gen Z now, they all thought or are thinking the same thing, and it just won't happen. Yeah. There's no reason for me to believe that the energy and the hope and the being on the right side of history that 20-year-olds today have, there's no reason for me to believe that will sustain until they're middle age and they're running for office and they're in power. It just is not likely to happen. Especially when you even just look at young people today and their politics as it's being, it's bifurcated by gender. You have boys that are more likely to be conservative and sexist and listening to Andrew Tate and stuff, and you have young women who are less likely. And so it's I think when I was young, I at least had hope. It's like, well, we just gotta have time. And then I always just remind myself that Ted Cruz is basically exactly my age. And Elon Musk and Ted Cruz are basically exactly my age. And I just think, my God, they saw the same things that I did, and probably held themselves much more, I think, humanistic ideals in the past, but something went wrong. I don't know. So yeah, I should also say that redemption, to me, just getting back to the definition, is not just believing that people can make good choices, but also that people are good. And even before they make good choices, they are deserving of love. Anyway, Leanne from Montreal, she says, "Hi, Kirk. I just wanted to say thank you so much for making this recent podcast episode, Suicide Leads to Counselor Lawsuit, available to everybody." Oh, I just want to say, so they're thanking us, you and me, Bob, for
I remember
episode in which the client had died by suicide and there was a lawsuit.
Yeah.
I find this episode and so many others absolutely vital for clinicians like myself who are starting out. It's just so amazing to be able to hear two therapists of your caliber and experience discuss this kind of clinical and ethical issues we deal with every day. Also, I don't know that Bob would be particularly comfortable reading this, but my admiration for him has only grown hearing him discuss his new object relations training, modeling case conceptualization in these terms, and modeling reflection he would make to clients. Wow, he is just awesome.
Thank you.
He and yourself, Kirk, are, to me, the shining beacons of what our profession could be. You guys are my role models of how this job beckons us to grow in an expected and unexpected way. Big hugs to you both, Leanne.
Oh, thank you.
So I lied by sarcastically saying that the next email, so it actually was a positive. That's very nice of you, Leanne. Yeah. It is my hope, truly. Normally as a professor or as a therapist, I suppose, when I prep and provide a lecture or a training or a therapy session, I suppose, I have, at the very least, the nonverbal feedback from, like, if I'm a professor, a student will, at the end of class, just kind of nod their head, or at best, they'll be like, oh, that was an interesting lecture or whatever. But really, more often, it's just like, just someone that's like, oh, interesting. Mm-hmm. And that will keep me going. But when we're just speaking into the ether, we don't get that.
Yeah.
But there are evidences, like if on YouTube the episode has a lot of thumbs up or something, or we get emails like this or comments, it does help. Thank you, Leanne, for that. All right, anonymous listener, she says, Dr. Anna, thanks for reading Cassie's email about her friend's breakup and your frank response. Just chiming in here, the email from Cassie was, I believe you and I, Bob, were talking about, we were responding to this email, and it was this woman writing in saying she was upset that her friend was drawing this boundary. Do you remember this?
Oh, the friend breakup. Yeah, a while back, and I vaguely remember it. Not much.
Yeah. If I remember right, Cassie was saying, I was in a really close relationship with a friend, and one day she said that she didn't want to text with me anymore. We should only talk in person. And the emailer in said something like, I was okay with that, I guess. And then I texted her and I said, I don't understand, like, what did I do? Or I don't have all the details right. And then she didn't get back to me. And then I asked her again, and then she blocked me. And then now she doesn't want to be friends. And I'm like, well, she directly asked you to not text her, which is a pretty severe thing to say and wasn't probably lightly said, was probably contemplated for a long time before that was requested. And then you just didn't follow it. And I'm guessing there was some hostility in there. I mean, it could be seen as hostile. So, having said that, there could be a chance of reconciliation if you were to not text her. And it sounds like you have some preoccupied attachment that's kicking in, and you're also potentially making some assumptions, some transference about what's going on in her mind. And it's not comfortable to her, which I could see. And so I think that's what she means by my frank response. And to be clear, I'm just going off of memory, and I do remember thinking there was redemption there. But going on. Thanks for reading Cassie's email about her friend's breakup and your frank response. I was the friend on the other end of a similar situation. I gave lots of reassurance and asked for some temporary space with a friend. And when that was ignored over and over, I felt forced into blocking this friend and will definitely keep it that way. My former friend, like you suggested Cassie may be dealing with, had abandonment in her past and regularly tried to make those of us around them feel responsible for managing their triggers around those feelings, often weaponizing it to get a response. For example, you're not responding quickly enough. It's triggering my abandonment issues, was nearly a direct quote from them. My question, for those of us who want to handle our friends, family, and partners with compassion and tend to feel overly responsible for others' feelings, how do we protect ourselves from people who tend to exhibit similar behaviors and expectations? Is anything other than shutting them out a sustainable response? Thanks. Bob, what do you think?
Well, I guess the proof in the pudding's in the eating. So if saying no to somebody works, then great. You've succeeded with your goal. But if I say no to somebody, if I observe my limit, if I'm playing with somebody and they continue to cross it, then I think at that point they're telling me they're not going to respect my boundary. And so I'm just going to do whatever's next, which might be, okay, I don't want to be friends no more.
Yeah. It's really hard because if you were to draw a boundary in the normal way, that would depend on the other individual having the ego strength and the non-transference to be able to withstand it. It would be hard for anyone. I am not preoccupied attachment. If someone drew a boundary like this with me, it would really hurt. I mean, it wouldn't just hurt with this one instance. It would make me wonder, oh my God, what am I doing to other people? And then I would get angry. It'd be hard.
Really?
Yeah.
I don't think that's true.
What do you mean?
Well, I mean, I don't know who you are, so I shouldn't say stuff like that. But it just strikes me that you have some humility, and if somebody did that, you would probably pay attention.
if you told me, Bob,
Yeah.
stop texting me so often, or don't stop, I'm drawing a boundary with you. Like, I don't want to hear, I can only take so much of you.
Well,
That would hurt my feelings.
I can't imagine doing that, but if I did do that, it would have a context that we were both aware of. I would
But I think that's what is essentially being told to these individuals.
Okay.
It's just like, you're too much. Or like, let's read this again.
All right.
Let's see. I gave lots of reassurance and asked for some temporary space with a friend.
Okay.
Temporary space. Like, I need some space from you, and I want to be your friend, but you're a lot, or this is a lot, or it's hard to have as much texting. I don't know exactly what this individual was saying, but
right.
It's not just I'm going through something. There's something about the way how frequently and how the pressure that you put on me to show up or to be helpful to you, or to be like a therapist-y friend or something is too much. And so, it's hard to draw a boundary with someone without it. If you're going to be honest, I mean, I suppose you could say, my phone is dead, so I can no longer receive texts. Or I have a brain condition that responds to specific frequencies, and you're the only human on the planet that actually triggers those, or whatever. But if you're going to be even mildly honest about it, it's an indictment on the other person's personality and on their behavior. It's going to be hurtful, and the individual.
It'll be painful, not hurtful.
Okay, what's the difference?
One implies intent.
Okay. Well, it'll be painful, and the other person will also have the commensurate issues that caused the behavior in the first place. So it's going to be really hard for them. So, the emailer the anonymous listener is like, is there, what's the strategy? And I just don't. The first thought I had was to. Yeah, just be as reassuring as possible. Like, you go to your friend, you're just like, look, I like you as a friend. I want you as a friend. I need you as a friend. And I don't know if it's me or you or both or whatever, but there's something about our dynamic when I get texts from you, like what happened last week when this happened. I'm not saying you did anything wrong, but I'll just tell you what it does for me internally is it the first text, I was like, oh yeah, and then I responded. But then the second text, it kind of felt like, I don't know, it felt maybe like you were starting to get upset at me about something, and maybe you weren't, but it just had that tone to it. And then I was starting to worry. I was like, oh no, how do I correct for this? And I tried to help over text, but text is hard to communicate. And then I think I said something wrong, and then you got back to me and you said this, and then we ended up a couple days later kind of in a tense situation. And so I don't know what to do, but I want you as a friend, and I don't want that kind of dynamic to happen. So how about we just not text anymore? So
that's pretty soft.
That's pretty soft. But if you are preoccupied or borderline, like, that's not going to go over well.
So what?
The question is, how do you do it so that it doesn't produce a breakup in the relationship? And that's what I'm saying. It's like, I just don't know.
Yeah.
I just don't know if you can, because as a therapist, we run into stuff like this, and I might have, I've drawn boundaries with borderline, and I'm not saying everyone's dealing with a borderline person, but I think it's on that spectrum. I've drawn boundaries with borderline clients and had to deal with them for 5 years, just talking about this tiny little boundary that I drew with them, and. Because it's so painful, it cuts right to the core, to their shame, to their feeling of worthlessness, to their feeling of abandonment and betrayal, and it's just, so I don't know. The best thing I could say is an approach of what I said, kind of in that vein. You're just talking about your own feelings, you're being reassuring, but it kind of sounds like that's what anonymous listener was doing, and it still didn't work.
So we shouldn't presume that because the other person has pain, you shouldn't do it, though. Like, I would be concerned that the message here is don't have a limit. But I don't think that's the message you mean to give. But it just seems to me that if somebody keeps encroaching on my space, at some point, if they keep doing it and nothing else works, then something direct, like, hey, this isn't working for me or whatever. If they have a negative response to it, I'm not on this earth to try to control for that. I think it's important that you don't be an asshole to somebody. But beyond that, I don't think you have responsibility for how people take it.
Yeah.
So, and who knows if it's a bad thing? It might be a good thing. It could be a helpful thing in the long run if this kind of feedback, like I'm remembering. My friend David Kersey 1,000 years ago says to me, comes into my office, this when I worked at the clinic. And he said, do you remember the other day when you said we're friends and so friends get to tell each other stuff? We were pretty good friends. Lovely guy. I'm like, yeah. And he's like, well, very often you have bad breath. And as soon as he said it, my mouth just shut. I don't want to talk no more. I don't want to say nothing more, right? And it was embarrassing, right? Really embarrassing. But so what? I mean, I have a lot of dental work that creates a problem here. And plus, I didn't have really good oral hygiene habits. So I was really grateful for the feedback, even though it was painful.
By the way, I've never smelled bad breath on you.
Oh, well, don't get too close.
I'm just saying.
Yeah. So it might be painful, but we don't know that that's a bad thing, right?
Yeah. I mean, the flip side to this whole conversation is if someone comes to you with that kind of boundary or request, then there's a why in the road, and there's probably a variety of feelings one has, but I think the ideal and the principle should be the following, which is how many other people wanted to tell me this but were afraid to tell me it for whatever reason.
Right. Yeah, right.
And as this friend of yours was saying, it's like, we are friends enough so that I can say this to you.
Yeah.
I value you enough to go through this discomfort to tell you this because I want us to be as optimal as possible and as long-lasting as possible.
It's actually a vulnerable thing to do to say
really
to somebody.
Vulnerable. Yeah, really scary.
I don't like this behavior. This is bothering me.
Yeah, and
it's really cool.
It's kind of like with the bad breath thing. It's a perfect example of that because of course you would want to know if you had bad breath.
I would.
Not only just to one person, but in all likelihood, there's been dozens of other people that have experienced your bad breath.
Oh, my God.
And, of course, never said anything because it's ridiculous it's upset, Yeah. So, it's actually, this came up recently. I had a party at my house, and the next day there was a rag, like a paper towel all wadded up with all these bloody splotches on it.
Ugh.
That was on the couch.
Ugh.
And it was unmistakably blood. There's a way that blood and looks different from like tomato sauce or something.
Oh, yeah.
And my wife and I found it, and we're just like, whose was this? And Stacy's like, she gets like a hazmat suit on or whatever. and on one hand, it's like you're just curious if something went wrong, but on the other hand, you just want to know, like, who, just out of curiosity, like clearly someone had, and also like what happened, because if they were bleeding out at the party, do we need to look into other kinds of things? So Stacy was like kind of at an impasse. She's like, well, we can't just like ask people, did they leave this weird bloody rag behind? And then I was like, oh yeah, I guess we can't, because that's because you can't like put out a blast email to everybody. But then I was like, why can't you? If these are our friends, and if they're going to be that offended, plus like who fucking cares? It's probably something fairly innocent.
Yeah.
And if it's not, like, I don't know, you made the mistake of leaving a bloody thing. Plus, even if it is kind of embarrassing, it's like we're all friends. as past a certain age, like, your body just starts to fall apart, and it's just, it just count the ways. So yeah, I sent out a blast text, and I was just like, who left the gross ass bloody rag on my couch last night? And one of my nicest friends is like, oh, it was me. I had a soccer game the other day, and someone beamed me in the nose with a soccer ball, and so I had been bleeding the previous day, and I guess I forgot to take the rag out of my jacket, and it fell out on your couch. I'm sorry about that. And then that was it, and I feel like it's kind of related, where it's just like, if you can't ask or make a request or point out something to people who are close to you, then you don't have anyone close to you then.
That is a fact. Well said.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so if you want closeness, then be close.
Yeah.
And get close and get your hands dirty.
Yep. I love it. Not easy, but I love it.
And so if someone tells you that your breath smells bad, or that you're a little intense over texting, then appreciate that. It's like, oh my God, that is horrific to think about, but I'm so happy that you told me that. And oh my God, I wonder if other people are feeling this way. What an opportunity for me to deepen my self-awareness and deepen my relationships and go to therapy.
Yeah.
And we take a break. More emails. One more when we get back.
Okie doke.
All right, back from the break. So this next email is from YouTube member Baby Therapist in Seattle. She says, she's a novice therapist.
Cool.
Hi, Dr. Anna. I'm curious for your thoughts on balancing your therapist brain. When I interact with family, friends, coworkers, people I'm dating, and even strangers, I find myself psychoanalyzing them. I have always been hypervigilant and aware of details. I presume this is my brain's way of trying to protect me from getting hurt. But it has definitely become worse after going through grad school. Do you, or did you ever find yourself doing this in your personal life? If so, how did you manage it, Bob?
Of course. Is there a therapist that doesn't or hasn't? I mean, of course you do. One avoids being obnoxious about it, right? I hope. But shit, man, my sister texted the other day having some struggle with my mother and her, advancing Alzheimer's and her deterioration. And my analytic brain went into function. I was thinking about what that would mean for my sister. And so, yeah, definitely analytic. And then what I offered her was basically just some warm support and some encouragement to hold her limit and not expect too much, because everybody loses the battle with Alzheimer's. So war of attrition. And I think she found that useful. And I doubt if I weren't trained as a therapist, I would have gone down that road. I might have. I mean, what do I know? I can only do the experiment once. And so, yeah, I think all therapists do this. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. I think, if I just think for myself, because that's the question, is it's super cringe, and mostly cringing to me, I think, in that when I decided to become a therapist in 1995, early 1995, and started to apply, and I think got accepted into Antioch to start in October,
right? And
I was starting to take prereqs. I was already identifying as a therapist. I was already thinking of myself as a therapist.
Well, in a way, I kind of like it.
I don't, because there's this videotape of me and my friends at a house party at my house. And we're all hanging out in my room and listening to music and drinking beer. And I'm, my body language and my questions are that of a complete fucking idiot.
Oh, yeah.
Who doesn't know what therapy is at all.
Yeah, right.
And is, it's not like wall to wall me psychoanalyzing everyone, but it's clear to me. I know what's going through my head.
Yeah.
And was that okay to do? No. Was it wise to do? No. Was I an idiot? Yes. Is it horrible? Yes. Should I have just told myself, stop psychoanalyzing? Yes. So there's that. Once I actually was in grad school, that pretty much disappeared because pretty quickly I, at the very least, understood I didn't understand, and at best understood a little bit so that I knew, oh, that's not really what therapy is. Fast forward to me practicing and living in the world and having friends and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, at first it was something I needed to push back on a little bit because it was getting in the way of me having authentic and spontaneous reactions and not top-down reactions to my friends and family. And probably prompted by a little bit of newness to me because as a new tool in my toolbox, and also an effort to like gain some sort of control or power in my life, or also trying to prove myself to everyone around me, because my friends and family to this day, they don't really think of me as a therapist, I don't think, which is fine. And I think there was some resentment around that. It was just like, hey, you understand, like I'm a big deal at work. and so there was some of that too. And that was obviously prompted by insecurity. But the notion that I am going to be able to turn off wisdom or turn off my awareness of something is not possible. Also, things like attachment style or understanding reactivity or compassion, conceptualizing things. If I have a friend who is like Umberto, for example, he will not anymore, but he and I had made a lot of plans together and did a lot of things together. We would have to coordinate our schedules a lot. And one of the things that I initially, when I bumped up against it, would get really annoyed with is that he would say things like, yeah, let's meet up tomorrow at 7:00. And then I'd be there at 7:00 and he wouldn't be there. And I'd text him and he'd be like, oh, I'm parking. And I'd say, oh, okay. And then like 7:45 and I'm like, where are you? Oh, I'm almost there. I just found a parking spot. Okay, see you in a bit. 8:45. What's going on? Oh, something kind of had because traffic. Da da da. I'm like, okay, so either you've been looking for a parking spot for the last one and a half hours, or you're fucking lying to me. That doesn't feel good.
Yeah.
I don't care if he's late or whatever. It's just like that kind of lying. Well, I, as a therapist, and getting to know his traumas and just his general personality, concluded that he is hypervigilant and he's terrified of rejection and of disappointing people. And he's a pleaser in a kind of a weird profile of a pleaser. He doesn't seem like a pleaser, but he actually is. And he, in all likelihood, if he wasn't a pleaser, he wouldn't have agreed to meet me at 7 to begin with, or he wouldn't have agreed to do something else with someone at 5:30, so that it would make, he's always like, oh, okay, yeah, I'll be there, because people want him to, or he thinks they want him to, because that's the other thing, is like, I would ask him, hey, let's do that thing, this weekend at 7:00. And I might even, eventually I would even say to him, and by the way, if you have something else that you're doing or you're busy or whatever, because normally you wouldn't have to say that to a friend, but I felt like I did have to say it. So I would say, hey, don't agree to it if you don't want to, because it's not a big deal to me. I don't really care. But he'd be like, no, I'll be there. I'll totally be there. I'd be like, okay, if you want, but it's, it's fine if you don't. No, I'll be there. Okay. And then time would come and he'd be late or he'd cancel the last minute and he'd have double booked himself. And I'd just be like, and so psychoanalyzing him makes me reframe it from he's a lying narcissistic bastard to he's a pleaser because he was traumatized and abandoned literally when he was 3 years old by his mom. So that's a completely different conceptualization. It doesn't make it any less annoying and inconvenient, but it completely reframes the situation. How many non-therapists would see it that way? Most people just would see it the general way, that he's a narcissistic, lying bastard. And so the psychoanalysis is what I believe a way to see things accurately, and a way to actually benefit everyone. This notion of, people say, "Oh, are you psychoanalyzing me?" And if I guess I was answering in a more elaborate way, I would say, you better hope I am, because if I'm not, I'm going to interpret you the way that everyone else does, which probably isn't in the positive. So you better hope I'm psychoanalyzing you. So that's my life with psychoanalysis. And eventually, I use the word wisdom because I think it is wisdom. Wisdom is thoughtful incorporation of experience and self-reflection, the product of. And the product of thoughtful reflection and experience, and just constantly in this space of trying to conceptualize and understand and formulate and understand my reaction, my bias and everything, like that wisdom that emerges from that is a tremendous positive for all my relationships. So the psychoanalysis, or the analyzing myself and other people, I believe I wonder at how shitty my relationships would be if I didn't become a therapist 30 years ago.
Right.
How rigid or opinionated or biased or self-centered or misunderstanding or jaded. I just, who knows what would have happened to me. So that's my answer to that.
Yeah.
And that does it for that episode of Psychology Seattle. Everyone out there, please take care of yourself, because
you deserve it.